So this morning we are talking about the Strategic Action Plan, which is ODOT's roadmap for the next 3 years or so. And it is action-oriented. It's not just about creating a plan, it's actually having action steps that will lead us to accomplish these goals. And joining us this morning, we have the assistant directors and our director of ODOT who will be sharing with you some reflections of 2020, a very tumultuous year, and then also introducing the Strategic Action Plan, kind of what it is, why it's needed, where it's taking us. And then we'll have an opportunity for you to ask questions in Slido. If you go to slido.com, the event code is SAP Townhall. We've already got questions in the queue and ready to go. So when it comes to that time, we will be asking the assistant directors those questions. But to kick off, I am going to stop sharing this screen here, if I can figure out how to do that. Here we go. And I am going to share with you a video that hopefully you can see up on the screen. Assistant directors, are you seeing that little video square there? Okay, great. So this is a video that we put together to help introduce the Strategic Action Plan, and we're going to play that for you now. All right, well, I understand that perhaps the audio might not have come through there. My apologies for that. We actually even tested this out a little bit earlier in this webinar, and it was working fine. Okay, so let me then try to get out of sharing this content here. If I can figure out how to do that. I am going to try and go back to the PowerPoint here for just a moment. And now I am going to stop sharing. If I can figure out again how to do that, let's stop sharing that. What we're going to do now is we are going to turn to our assistant directors to talk a little bit about 2020 and have some opportunities for them to reflect, to look back, celebrate successes, really express gratitude for all that we've done throughout this year. And so we're going to take 10 minutes to do that. And I would mention, too, if you were not able to hear the audio, if you go to youtube.com/OregonDOT, you'll be able to find the Strategic Action Plan video, and you can hear the audio that went along with it. But I'm going to call on our director, Chris Strickler, if we could, and have him talk a little bit about 2020 and perhaps hopes for 2021. And meanwhile, I'll try to get the screen cleared up here. Chris?
All right. Thank you, Tom. So can everybody hear me okay? Thumbs up from somebody on the screen. Okay,
sure
perfect. Wonderful. Well, so thank you, Tom, and I want to say thank you to everybody else who's watching first and foremost. As I think about the last year, I mean, quite honestly, every one of us has our own kind of internalized moment and we say, geez, could we take any more, right? I mean, there's been a lot of things to reflect on, a lot of personal moments. I call them personal growth opportunities. And I coined that from a friend that I met years ago that used to say that in just about every meeting I was in with him. And so it was a reflection of how much change we go through as an industry. But if I look back on 2020 and really say, what does the last year really hold for us, and how does that help inform the next year? There's a couple of words that come to mind. So reflecting, I would say perseverance is one. Ability to really withstand and continue forward in an ever-changing world. As I think about all of the things that we've been confronted with, whether that be the pandemic, which we are still confronted with the pandemic, or social unrest, or peaceful protests that have, overtaken into other things that maybe are less than peaceful, and then wildfire response and wildfire in and of itself and the impacts across the entire state of Oregon. It is clear that aside from all of the other things that we had been planning to take on and all of the things that have been important to us as an agency, the world still moves around us. And so as I think about the last year, I look to each of you, quite honestly, and I know that might sound a little bit cheesy, pardon the reference there, but quite honestly, it's our frontline staff, it's our leaders within this great agency, it's all of you that have really enabled us to move forward. And if I had one thing that I would say in addition to perseverance, I would say what I hear quite frequently is there's so much change, too much change and too many things going on as I look back on 2020. And maybe the optimist in me looks back and says, but guess what? Look at all you have accomplished. We transitioned to a mobile and remote workforce almost overnight. And while not everybody is doing that, quite honestly, because not every job really enables us to, look at how well we've responded. And that's really a testament to all of you. So perseverance really is the term that comes to mind as I think about the last year and what we've had to accommodate. The other, I would say, is constant change. And I would love to be in front of you and say that that constant change is going to go away and we're going to get to a point of harmony and synergy, and we're just not going to. And the reason for that is, quite frankly, the world is continuing to move around us. And while we are dealing with a pandemic and other things in these difficult times, everything is still moving. And quite frankly, my appreciation goes through the roof for all that you have done to help us get there. This has been an especially trying year for everybody. And I'm certainly not the only one that has experienced that, and nor are any of you the only ones that have experienced that. You've seen that in all of your peer groups around the state, whether those are peer groups that you now have to visit on Zoom or peer groups within your family or what have you. It is just a different environment. But the one thing that has not stopped is, frankly, the world has kept moving. And that is a testament to the work that you have all done. It's a testament to the things that we hold dear as an agency. And I really have to say, in addition to perseverance and to constant change, I have to say thank you. Because as we think about the upcoming year, we're going to continue to ride on those benefits that we've received over the last year. And hopefully things will get a little bit easier as we go forward. But quite honestly, we still have a lot of work in front of us, and you all know that. And you've been doing a fantastic job of stepping up to the plate and coordinating that as we go forward. So kudos to you. Thank you for all that you've been doing. Over the last year, we've developed that strategic action plan, and Mr. Fuller captured it very well. He kind of took my talking points, which is we have a commission, as well as ourselves, that wants to capture tangible outcomes in an action-oriented plan. What are the things that we want to accomplish in the short-term horizon here so that we can really start to show some of those benefits that we're bringing to Oregonians? Our system is changing around us. The needs of our system is changing around us. The needs of the people of Oregon are changing around us. And so as we think about how do we keep pace and then in some cases be out a little bit ahead of those changes that are coming in the transportation industry and the sector, and what are the needs and access points that we need to provide, all of those things are embedded in our strategic action plan and for that work going forward. So maybe I'll stop there and allow the assistant directors to dive in for a moment, but I would just say this. Your perseverance, your ability to stick to it, your adaptation to change, which again, I know has felt heavy at times, but quite frankly, you have done it. All of those things are fantastic qualities, and it makes me really proud as I look back on 2020 in a year that's really tough to find moments to really capture success around. I think we've done it as an agency, and to that, each and every one of you should be commended. And I will tell you personally from me, I appreciate all that you're doing.
Cooper, why don't we go to you?
Travis. I'll weigh in a little bit. I think that one of the reasons why we were able to succeed as an agency was that we, in 2020, despite the challenges, all brought that one ODOT spirit forward to really work together across our divisional boundaries, across our silos, to do what was right for the agency and help our customers. And I think of all the folks within the Sports Services Division who responded so effectively as we moved to remote work, the folks in IS, the folks in all those different groups who never missed a beat in supporting the entire agency as we made major shifts. And I also really think we did a very good job in supporting the DMV this summer as they went through some very challenging times with reopening. We saw people from across the agency step up in all sorts of ways, whether it was out in the regions as we reopened DMV offices, regional offices offering traffic control to make sure we were accommodating our customers while maintaining social distancing, or when DMV had literally tens of thousands of people to call to schedule appointments, people all across the agency from probably every division stepped up, pulled out their phones, and started dialing people up to offer them appointments at DMVs. That was truly amazing, and it really showed that when we all work together as one ODOT, we can do great things in the face of significant adversity. So I really have to just hand it to everyone who stood up and stepped up in a really challenging year to make sure that we could continue to serve Oregonians effectively, continue to do the business of the state. Really, truly impressive how little we skipped a beat despite some very significant challenges.
Hey there, can folks hear me? Great. I see
Sure can.
Hey,
Sure can.
Great, thanks. This is Cooper. If I'll just go ahead and jump in and echo some of the things that have already been said, but maybe add a couple others. As I look back on last year and I think about where I stood on January 11th of 2020 and what I thought, like so many of us, the year ahead was going to look like, and now looking back on what the year actually was, I'm struck with our ability to adapt. I guess that would be the theme that I would most underscore that I know Director Strickler already mentioned, but remarkable ability for everyone on our team to adapt to changing circumstances. And as mentioned, I think it's going to be a strength we're going to have to continue to draw heavily on as we move forward. Hopefully, not as much unexpected adaptation as we had to confront this year in 2021. But I know we're up to the task no matter what 2021 brings after seeing what we were able to do this past year. In addition to our DMV team and all of the great efforts on that front, I really look across the entire division and I can come up with examples of ways that we were able to kind of step up to the challenge, whether it's the folks on the policy data and analysis team stepping up to provide traffic data, which really has helped inform state enterprise decisions, whether those be governor's office decisions or Oregon Health Authority decisions. Great amount of data is needed, and we really stepped up to the challenge, not expecting to have to do that. Whether it's our transit team, public transit team being able to come up with a process on the fly to distribute millions of dollars in COVID relief to keep local transit agencies running when it's most needed. Looking across to our safety division, a number of huge wins on that front as well. Chief among them, standing up employee safety protocols in this new world, in this really kind of uncharted territory, and doing it with to great effect in ways that have kept us all safe. So that coupled with the support services team, as mentioned already, Herculean efforts to get us up and running virtually and keep us up and running and really help enable that as a way that we can do our business even beyond COVID. So a big kudos to that team, as well as all the other kind of ancillary activities that they've been doing. And then, of course, delivery and operations side of the house, the folks that are out there in the field that probably aren't on this call right now because they're out there maintaining our system, and they've figured out ways to maintain our system in a pandemic, keeping each other safe. Remarkable work. Same on the project delivery side. We have been able to keep our construction projects moving, and that can't be said for some of our other states, especially in the early stages of COVID. We were able to figure out ways to work around it to keep each other safe, but also keep those projects coming through the pipeline and keep our economy moving. So another huge accomplishment on that front. And of course, the wildfires already mentioned. Amazing work to basically pull together a team to do all the contracting for removing debris in a massive statewide event of historical significance that we weren't expecting, and we've been able to meet that challenge as well. And then I think about that coupled with some of the other new ways that we're doing business, to include standing up a climate office, looking at how our investments impact emissions around the state, impact our climate, but also having a more kind of clear-eyed lens approach in other areas to how we invest and what those impacts are. That's new for us, and we've been able to do that as well. But the theme that I see running through all of that work is that really we were able to put our customers first, and whatever was needed, we rose to the challenge in every corner of this agency to meet the needs of our customers. It makes me really humbled and proud to be a part of this team. And so big thank you to all of you out there for everything that you have done and everything I know we will continue to do in the year to come. So that'd be my comments.
All right. Thanks, Cooper, very much. Let's turn it to Lindsay and just a little time check. Lindsay and the Congress, we're trying to be able to get to the questions folks have. So just a brief comments would be just awesome.
Certainly. So good morning, folks. I will actually make this brief, and I always hate going towards the end of these because I always feel like we're just, dittoing what everyone else has said, so I will continue to do that and say ditto. I think, Cooper, that was an incredibly exhaustive kind of run-through of all of the really specific circumstances and things that I think immediately jump to mind when we think about ways in which we, I think, as an organization and all of you primarily and particularly have been incredibly adaptive and incredibly resilient. I think so to my mind, it is really those two things that are kind of the connective tissue and the things that run through, which is the durability, it's the adaptability, and it's the resilience for how we're able to continue to put one foot in front of the other and really respond to the needs of Oregonians across the state. I think, can people still see me? My screen just went blank for a second. Oh, good, I'm back. Okay, sorry. I'm thinking back to the number of things that 2020 threw our way, and despite all of the challenges, we were still able to move forward. And so for me, it's really a little bit of an exercise in looking back, but maybe more importantly, an exercise in looking forward, which is despite all of the things that 2020 threw our way, look at what we were able to accomplish, look at what you all were able to accomplish and achieve, and imagine how we can do that in a circumstance when we don't have the same challenges that 2020 threw our way. So I'm actually really looking forward to this conversation. I'm looking forward to all of the pieces of the strategic action plan and all of the other work that we're doing because I think alignment and when we can sort of put our shoulder into it, I think it's really going to be unprecedented what we can actually accomplish. So I'm really excited and just looking forward to the work ahead. So with that, I'll just kick it straight to Nakachis. If there's anything you want to clean up for me on, otherwise, let's bring it on 2021.
Thanks, Lindsay. So I just want to say echo everything everybody else has said. 2020 has definitely been a great shift for me. This is the longest I've lived in another place besides Wisconsin uninterrupted. And I have met all of the great people of ODOT, most of which I've met through Zoom, and that is my introduction and really my entire world of Oregon. So I really appreciate everybody really figuring out how we can make sure that social equity doesn't feel like it's happening to ODOT, but instead we're thinking about being a team and what it means to really be able to serve the entirety of the state to the best of our ability. And so I just want to thank everybody for the work they've done. The crews I've met, a lot of the teams as well, offices really are doing amazing work without full teams. And so really trying to fill in blanks and hustling to get that done and doing it with grace and honor. So great, very appreciative and grateful to be able to mirror that type of service, and I'm honored to be a part of the team.
All right. Thank you, Nikatra, so much. And sorry that we've only been able to see you via Zoom. I did have the opportunity to meet you in person, socially distanced, of course. But looking forward to a new day here in 2020. Well, let's move to the strategic action plan for a couple of minutes here before we get to the questions. And I think one of the big questions we have is, why do we need this? What's the need that we have in order to bring about a strategic action plan? So any of the assistant directors want to tackle that one?
I'll take a quick stab, and I'll try to be very brief. But the strategic action plan, to my mind, is really a great tool, and for the first time, it shows us how to align the agency in pursuit of a shared set of principles, goals, and outcomes, particularly focused on the transportation system and how we serve our customers. So in the past, we have obviously done a strategic business plan that focused primarily on our internal work. How do we become a healthier, stronger organization to help serve our customers and meet our mission and goals? But it didn't really talk about where we should be focusing externally to the agency, our investments in the system, our efforts to serve our customers. And so I think this document really builds on what we've done in the past of building our internal capabilities and then really focusing where is it outside the agency in our mission that we need to step up our game. And I think that this is a really important complement to the work we've done in the past and will really help get us all in alignment in those directions that we need to head.
Thank you, Travis. And I'm going to direct this next one at Nikatra, if that's okay, because I think it's germane. How do you envision the agency evolving in light of the strategic action plan? I think that's a word that we've been hearing a lot. What do you see in terms of the sort of evolution of our agency?
So I think that we're at a pivotal point, and the strategic action plan allows us to take the reins of the moment instead of being reactionary to it and being proactive in what it looks like to move in that evolution. I think that evolution was inevitable. If you've seen in all of our plans before the strategic action plan, whether it's long-range planning, whether it's how we do our steps, things shift as time moves on. And so I think that we really were at the forefront in terms of what it looks like to evolve in 2020. And we were planning for it, and it really aligned. All of the shifts in the world really aligned with our plan to evolve. And so I think that our priorities don't necessarily shift what we've been focused on, but I think it shifts how we talk about it and where they're placed in our conversation. I'm going to pinpoint social equity, probably kind of obviously. Social equity is not new to ODOT, but how we approach it, how often we approach it, how it's attached to all of our roles, I think that is part of our evolution, right? And so attaching that to finance and attaching that to our day-to-day operations and our transportation network might not have always been a clear linkage. And so that evolution not only is timely for what's happening worldwide, but I think it's part of what would have happened if we would have decided to react to the world instead of being at the forefront, which I think is a really awesome opportunity that we saw it and did it and we're in it, and before a lot of other organizations or agencies were able to figure that out.
Thank you, Nikatra. And final question that I'll throw out there before we go to our staff questions. Lindsay, perhaps this one is to you. How are we communicating the strategic action plan? Obviously, here we are today communicating to our internal staff. what are some of the other things that we're doing to get the word out about this?
Yeah, thanks for the question. That's a great question, and I'm glad that sort of people are thinking about what we're doing in that space. I actually feel like our communications have been incredibly, will be incredibly robust starting right about now. So I think we're kind of on two a little bit maybe parallel, but certainly complementary tracks, right, which is how do we start talking about this internal to the organization? How do we start, I think, socializing, introducing this within the walls of ODOT? And then how do we start, I think, relating it and translating it to what does it mean for the folks on the outside? What does that mean for our business partners? What does that mean for our stakeholders? And at the end of the day, what does that actually mean for Oregonians? And what can Oregonians expect to see change? And what can they expect to see, I think, from us in a very broad and holistic way? So I think starting now, again, folks will start to see all of these things kind of crystallize. We'll start to see a lot of conversation, whether it's with, I think, stakeholder groups in our advisory committees or whatever informal conversations we might be having. I think you'll start to see it at, larger, maybe a little bit more formal conferences and events, that sort of thing. But we'll start to see all of these kind of percolate and permeate throughout. I think our business partners, our stakeholder groups, and I think out into the public space. So look for more to come.
All right. Thank you so much, Lindsay. Well, let's go now to staff questions. And we're using Slido, just to remind you, slido.com, and the hashtag for this event is SAP Townhall. And the way Slido works, if you haven't used it before, is people have asked questions, and you have the opportunity to vote those questions up, or you have the opportunity to provide your own questions. So the first one, and the top one on the list here, and perhaps, Cooper, if it's okay with you, I will throw this to you. If we were forced to prioritize the strategic outcomes due to a lack of sufficient funding, which ones would be the most important?
Thanks, Tom. I appreciate getting the softball question. That's a great question. Let me think about this for a sec. Well, it goes a little bit back to the question before in terms of why we need a strategic action plan, because I think we have so much that we do as an agency that if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. And so really back to kind of Travis's answer to the need for a strategic action plan, setting some intentionality around what we are going to do and what we're going to focus on in the near term, I think is really important. So with that in mind, it's hard to say, and I guess this is going to sound like a dodge of the question, but what I would say is, as we looked at the strategic outcomes that we were shooting for, we recognize that they're all interrelated. They're all linked to some degree, right? And so really, I think if the resources are constrained to the degree where we realize we can't achieve all of those strategic outcomes over the next couple of years, what we need to do is focus on achieving aspects of each that then will have some positive benefit to some others. So, for example, if we were to look at access, mobility, and climate change as one of those, that's one of the goals. If we were to look at the climate, I got a kindergartner by me. If we were looking at the climate goals that we have out there about reducing the amount of emissions that we have that we produce as an agency, that actually has big impacts on project delivery. It has big impacts on some of the other potential equity goals. There's benefits across the board there. Let me think of another example, if you'll bear with me. Congestion is another great one. So congestion relief, if we're going to actually do that in a way that allows for significant impact, that will have effects on the economy. It'll have effects on equity, and a lot of the other areas that we've identified as trying to address in the other strategic outcome areas. So what I would say is really be a conversation around how do you kind of pinpoint where you're going to focus with the resources you do have that's going to have some kind of second order benefits to those others. But I think we can do that, and the structure allows us that flexibility. And I know that doesn't sound like the answer of we would choose 2, 4, and 6, but I think the reality is we wouldn't. We would choose where we focus the resources we have to try to get as broad of a benefit to those outcomes as possible. Recognizing that it's not all about the transportation system, right? We have to focus on funding. We have to focus on equity. Those are the three priorities there. So it would be wrong to say we would just choose the ones that squarely align with the transportation system, because I don't think that's the case.
That's perfect. And you handled the hardball very, very nicely, Cooper. I'm going to throw this next one back out to Lindsay because you kind of already touched on it, but this is about how will this be enculturated into ODOT? The question is, the first strategic action plan showed up out of nowhere and without much internal engagement. Internal buy-in is important for achieving the outcomes desired. What's the internal engagement plan for this strategic action plan?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the internal engagement plan starts today, right? I mean, this is the first in a series of town hall meetings that we're going to be starting, and I think, I don't know if they're every month or every maybe 6 weeks or so, but right, we'll start today, kind of introduce it in the broad strokes, and then as we move forward, I think we will all be talking with managers, talking with division administrators, talking with your teams about how can we, I think, better understand what this is. How can we really engage in the content? How can we understand how it relates to the work that we're doing on a regular basis every single day out across the system? And diving in deeper in all of these subsequent town halls and all of the subsequent webinars that we're doing, diving in deeper to each of the strategic outcomes. So I think it'll roll out over time, but I think very similar to exercises and sort of engagement processes that we've done in the past, where we sort of get little bits and chunks along the way, and then all of these, I think, continue to build upon one another until they sort of come into alignment and come into a little bit of more, I think, clarity around what it is that we're trying to do.
All right. Thank you, Lindsay. And perhaps this one could go to Travis, just sort of doing the round robin here, if that's okay, Travis. And this question is, the urgency of global climate change should be causing a fundamental realignment of the transportation sector as a whole. How does the strategic action plan reflect that basic reality and not just nibble at the edges?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a really good question. I think Cooper spoke to this a little bit about how we are reorienting the agency with a new climate office, but we're also looking at how we can modify the way we make our investments. In the recent STIF, we actually had the climate office develop a model, a screening tool that looked at all the different ways of investing funding, and we came up with a number of scenarios for investing money in the transportation system, and then ran it through that model to determine how would it impact safety, how would it impact the condition of the system, how would it impact climate mitigation and adaptation, what impacts would it have on social equity, congestion, multimodal accessibility, and all of those things sort of spit out outcomes on the other end, and then we use that in the conversation with the commission to help direct resources. So what you saw in the end was that as a result of that work, as a result of the direction from the governor to consider climate in all the decisions we make, we made a significant investment in increasing the amount of money that goes into the non-highway modes. Was it enough to really achieve all that we need to do in driving down emissions? No. But was it a really good down payment and really showing that direction that we are moving? Absolutely. The reality is, and to the question earlier about enough money, we don't have enough money to do everything as well as we would like. In order to meet our climate goals as a state, we need to up our investment in all modes of transportation immensely. We probably need to triple or quadruple investment in public transportation. That's something that's not just ODOT. It's not something we can do just alone in this. It's something we're going to have to work with stakeholders, with the legislature, with the whole broad range of folks across the state to ensure that we have the resources to invest in all these areas. So we are taking climate very seriously, and you'll see us continuing to work across all of the areas where we have the ability to make an influence, whether it's the organizational structure, whether it's our investments, looking at how do we drive additional investments in multimodal transportation. Also, how do we push for the electrification of the transportation system? These are all the issues that we are grappling with and will be one part of the solution in how we deal with them in the SAP, but it's going to have to be much broader than that. It's transportation and climate is a really broad conversation because it touches how 4.2 million Oregonians make decisions and move around the state every day. So we're going to have to be deeply engaged in that.
All right. Thanks, Travis. And somebody mentioned to me on a Teams chat that they would like to know how many people are participating today. So just to let you all know, there are about 550 of you out there. So really good turnout. Really appreciate the attention that you're taking, the time you're taking for this very important topic. And perhaps, Director Strickler, I can address this next question to you. Feel free to punt it to any of your assistant directors if you want. But the modern transportation system priority seems to include goals that have been on ODOT's radar for quite some time and are arguably in conflict with limited funding. In what ways does this priority provide a new, more focused strategy?
Yeah, thank you for that. That's actually a great question and one that I'm happy to address. In some ways, maybe I'll start back at the beginning, and that is, if I was to ask 4,700 people across the agency whether or not we had enough money to do the things that we need to do, I bet you we would get 4,700 different answers that would all center around the same thing, which is no, and we don't have enough money to do all the things that we need to do. So as we look across what our kind of mission has been for the last 50 plus years, it's been to address these things, and modernizing the transportation system is one of them. That won't change as we go forward as you look at modernizing the system and this conflict with the amount of revenue. But what does change and what we are trying to prioritize as we look forward is this. There are areas of our system where, frankly, we've taken a peanut butter approach kind of across the entire system to make sure that there was a sense that everybody got a little bit of something. And then there were other areas of our system that, frankly, didn't get the investment that we have needed. And that conflict is always going to be there. And so as we start to balance the needs and modernizing the system and going forward, we're going to be looking hard at these things that really complement each other. And so what I mean by that is one of the ways to modernize the transportation system is to look at ways for congestion pricing or a tolling program. And that satisfies all three of the priority areas, right? And so we're going to be looking at ways to do that. A tolling program done right and a congestion pricing program done right addresses some of the sustainable revenue issues that we have. Excuse me. It modernizes our system because, frankly, we haven't had that on our system while our neighboring states, most of them already have. And it brings a sense of equity to say those that are using the system, paying for the system, but looking at that from a broader perspective. So as we start to look forward, our goal will be to really try and make these types of decisions and prioritize those competing funds to address elements of all three of those priority areas. And to the earlier question, I think the ADs handled it very well, and I would just add one thing to that, which is this strategic action plan is a recognition of something that we've been kind of paying attention to for quite some time, and that is we don't have enough money to do the things that we need to do. We have a lot of plans within the agency that do a lot of different things and have long horizons on them, and if we were to ask across the agency, what is our priority, we would get literally hundreds of different priorities. So narrowing to these three and trying to recognize that our future-looking decisions in these times of difficult financial need really does try and kind of crystallize the things that we're trying to accomplish. If it meets the criteria within those three priority areas, then likely it is a good investment and one that we should go forward with. And that's how we'll be assessing these things going forward. So while it is very consistent with the mission that we've been working toward for decades, it is a narrowing of that to really say, does it meet all of these priority areas? Does modernizing the system and these specific investments really advance the ball to create an opportunity for sustainable revenues and those other things? And the tolling program is a good example of that.
All right, Chris, thank you very much. This next one, not sure who should get this one, so let's just throw that out there and let's see. And it is that outcome number 8, which is innovative technologies, only focuses on new stuff. It doesn't address the real issue of aging technologies and systems and the lack of funds dealing with this. These are more important than new things. What are we doing about this? And I'm going to try to put that one up on the screen here if I can. But who would like to take that one?
Hey, this is Cooper. I'll take a stab at answering it and then see if anybody else wants to jump in. I think it's a great question. I guess I'd say a couple things to it. First, I would say that while we wanted to be really concrete in the strategic outcomes that we put in this plan, so we know what we're shooting for and whether or not we achieve them, it's important to recognize the spirit of what we're flagging here as needed in the agency. And I would say that the concrete timelines of having a certain technology come on board by X date, and some of the more kind of granular details, we are going to be holding ourselves to account on that, but that doesn't preclude us from looking at other ways to achieve the overall kind of goal of the outcome. So for transformative technology, we recognize as an agency that we have to both use new technologies and then also transition away from antiquated technologies in order to be more efficient, in order to spend our limited resources in a way that isn't redundant and unnecessary. But I also flagged that some of these new technologies do both. So if you look at the automated routing system for commerce and compliance, there's a very old paper-based system on how we do permitting for freight moving through the state. You know, if we are able to stand up a system that allows us to do that electronically, there's going to be cost savings in terms of FTE. There's going to be cost savings in terms of the time that we devote to tracking how freight moves and communicating with others about routes and all of the other things. So there are benefits there, and they're all kind of taken together. What I recognize why it's a good question is we've identified those new technologies, but I don't think they impact us only in terms of being new, because they are going to be replacements of some of the antiquated ways we do business right now. And again, just to reiterate, this doesn't preclude other opportunities, and this is why it's on all of us to be looking, understand this action plan, understand the strategic outcomes we're driving for, and look for opportunities on our own teams for how we can implement it to achieve these goals, even outside of what's defined there strictly.
All right. Thank you so much, Cooper. All right. So here, this is a great next one because it's really not a question. It's a statement that's really been upvoted to the top. And it says 2020 thanks. A huge thank you to our computer support personnel who have been nothing but helpful and unfailingly patient as all of us inept folks transition to working from home. And I know every single one of us would echo that. And I could name names, but I'm sure that would leave some folks out. But absolutely phenomenal job done by Mark Sauer's team there. There in IS. So thank you, a big thank you from the folks that are on this. Also, I'm going to mention or provide a link to you at the end to a survey that we've created that would allow you to provide some feedback to us. If you heard any of the messages of this plan, give you an opportunity to really talk about or to show level of support. We're just doing these ongoing surveys just to see what folks are thinking about it. So that'll come at the end there. Okay, so next question is, most of the metrics identified are a simple directional statement, increase X, more of Y, et cetera, but there are a few, there are few specific benchmark values. Is there analysis to consider what or when benchmarks must be hit to achieve end outcome, i.e. the CO2 targets, et cetera? Who would like to grab that one?
I can talk about that one a little bit. So this is Nakatris. I think that is a really keen point out. I think that, as Lindsay was talking about, how this is the beginning of internal conversation, how people are engaged. If you look at the strategic action plan, I do think the implementing actions for 2021 are a lot of spaces that really point to analysis of the data we've collected, how we collect data, what our baseline can really be from some of those directional movements. So I think the directional movements, those big targets, will be what we talk about in 2023, but the work to get there is going to be focused over the next 2 years and can still be informed in a lot of ways by the people who work alongside of us, right? And so as the toolkit continues to get rolled out and you see the progress reports and you see we're going to shift this way and how we're doing that, that's informed by everybody. And so I think it's an opportunity for people to get engaged in that portion. And I think it's a way for us to really think about how we do think about our metrics and how people can be involved in that engagement. And so you will see the progress reports. You will see the the movement. You will see the analysis of what we're doing, what we have done, and how it can shift to those directional targets, which yes, they are very blanket. We're going to increase it, but how? And I think the but how is what we're working on in 2021 and trying as much as possible to make space for as many people to be engaged in that as possible. So look forward to hearing from people, ODOT, internally, and how we can do that as we think about how to be held accountable externally as well.
Terrific. Thank you, Nikatris. So here's the next one. Currently, we're working with crash data that is 2 years old. None of our systems are linked, i.e. DMV, EMS, I guess that would be emergency management or medical, and cars. Police data systems can't and don't talk to each other. When will we bring data into the 20th century? Who's up for that one?
So I feel like I've said a lot, so I certainly don't want to jump over others if they want to jump on this one, but I think it's a really great point that folks are raising. A lot of conversations around that. We have data in lots of different parts of the organization. To be clear and answer the question as soon as possible is really the answer, that we're actively trying to address exactly those points that are raised, recognizing there's a lot of complexity to the data that we do have, the different ways that it's stored, how it can communicate, and it goes a lot into the technologies that we have as well, right? So a lot of these are hand-in-glove processes that we have to do kind of concurrently. But it is, to my mind, one of the key areas where we can gain efficiencies as an agency and be more coherent in the way that we use our data, we collect our data. So yes, it's a great point and something that we're actively working on, and I'd say is an integral piece of a lot of those goals and outcomes that we're shooting for with the plan.
My apologies. So many windows open. I couldn't get back to my mute button. All right, here's the next question. So going back up to the top here, how does this plan relate to or impact other plans in motion, specifically the strategic business plan? Perhaps we could throw that out to you, Director Strickler.
Yep, I'm happy to, and I'd also look to the others to really help in this as well, because I think that's a great question, and as I look at the Slido questions, there's actually one below that too that might warrant coming in at the same time, which is I've read the strategic business plan. It provides a little substance. It can be summed up by we are going to do better. We have not made movement to deal with internal efficiencies and optimize our technology. Why are we going external now? And in my mind, and I do want to make sure we're getting terminology correct, but we do have the strategic business plan efforts, and then this is the strategic action plan folding over that. Let me summarize that quickly, and then I do want to look to the assistant directors as well. Strategic business plan was a foundational document for the agency that really looked at the areas of inside the agency that we needed to focus on some internal health. And so as we think about internal health, I mean, clearly, whether you're a long distance runner or whether or not you're an athlete that plays, tennis or basketball or what have you, you have certain elements of taking care of yourself that you have to employ if you want to perform at a level that you really hold yourself accountable to. But at the end of the day, that performance and that accountability is the target. That is the end game. So the preparation that you're doing is that internal work, right? It's the strategic business plan, internal focus. But then that action plan and those external movements and the accomplishments that you achieve after you've gotten yourself ready, those are the things that you're targeting. And as we look at the strategic action plan in and of itself, it's really targeted on those external audiences because, quite frankly, the strategic business plan focused internally on our health aspect. Our existence as an agency is really a product of our external audience. It's not something where we're here to serve ourselves. And while that doesn't take the ownership off of we have to work with each other and we have an accountability to each other and we do serve within kind of an arm-in-arm strategy with all of our agency across all 4,700 of us, it really is in furtherance of something that's external. And so doing one without the other isn't going to be a healthy way for us to succeed in the way that we're looking for, whether or not, again, that's accomplishing that finish spot in the marathon, or whether we're in a dead sprint. And I hate the kind of summarizing just down to the analogy, but it really is as simple as the fact that we serve Oregonians. We don't serve each other. And while our service to each other really is in support of the external audience, if we have lost sight on our external partners, our external audience, and those that we serve, if we've lost sight of the customer service aspect and we just focus internally, then we're going to have gaps. And quite frankly, we're trying to avoid that by having this complement of the two. I view the strategic action plan as that internal health document. How do we take care of ourselves as we move forward? And the strategic action plan is partly that, but then how do we expand and go beyond that to what are we serving, what are we in furtherance of?
Anybody else want to add anything to that?
I would just add briefly that to a significant extent, the strategic business plan has been institutionalized in a handful of bodies, the Workforce Council, which will continue to wrestle with the workforce challenges that were laid out in the strategic business plan, and help with some of the areas that are included in the strategic action plan, as well as the Technology and Data Council, which is making good progress on how we prioritize our IT investments, and then the Budget Task Force as well, which is really focused on how can we ensure that we make strategic investments across the agency in an environment of limited funding. So I think you'll see the strategic business plan still being institutionalized in some of those bodies that will continue to wrestle with some of those issues.
And Travis, this next question is, I think, one for you, and that is about revenue sources, new types of revenue sources under consideration, and how will we work to implement them equitably. And the idea there is, I think, quality, low-cost bicycle pedestrian options, support of electric vehicle shift, and can we track the sort of share of road costs covered by these revenues and user fees?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good question. You know, in Oregon, we actually have one of the more innovative ways of funding the transportation system. We have a three-legged stool that relies on DMV fees, fuels taxes, and a weight mile tax on heavy trucks. So we have long been in the mode of trying to ensure that users of the system pay their fair share for the costs and the benefits that they derive from those. Going forward, the two major areas that are talked about in the strategic action plan are looking at tolling and at road usage charging, essentially adding two more legs to our three-legged stool. And that's important because with electric vehicles becoming more prominent, I have an electric vehicle, and we don't pay any gas tax when we drive an electric vehicle around, or don't pay much gas tax when we drive a hybrid. So we're looking at a situation in which the fuels tax will become less and less sustainable over time. And right now, that's the biggest source of funding. So we need to look at things like tolling and charging by the mile to ensure that people are paying their fair share for use of the roads. Long term, we're looking at how do we use road usage charging as a platform for charging people fairly, both by distance, by time of day perhaps. We already have, as I noted, charging for heavy vehicles by the mile based on their loads because they impose a significant and disproportionate impact on the system, particularly our pavement and bridges. So we will be looking at those areas as ways to shore up transportation funding in the long term and ensure sufficient, reliable funding. And for multimodal transportation, we'll also be looking at a wide variety of funding sources. In HB 2017, we were able to make some really historic and important investments in transit, in bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. With transit, we have a new statewide payroll tax that is set at 0.1%. So I know there are a number of legislators who would love to see an opportunity to prove those transit investments successful and look to use that as a tool to continue increasing investment in public transportation. We also have been able to make historic levels of investment in the bicycle and pedestrian network with the new multimodal active transportation fund, the community pass program that uses state and federal funding. So we're going to continue to look for opportunities to build on our successes and continue to increase the amount of money we have for those modes of transportation that it can help improve access and equity, address climate, and make sure that everybody can move around without having to rely on a personal automobile.
All right. Thank you, Travis. I'm going to direct this next one to Nikotris. And the question just left. Here it is. The number one action of the strategic action plan is increasing workforce diversity. I see a need to invest in the job pipeline by helping BIPOC students get interested in STEM trades. Do we have any strategy like this? And you might want to define those acronyms for us too, Nikotris.
Absolutely. So one, I want to say that in the strategic action plan, it is really easy, and I know we talked about this a little bit before, to rank the actions. We tried our best to make sure that they weren't ranked. So it is number one, but also it's not number one. It's the first one because they're all one. And also it's a priority, so we are working on it. So to increase increase the diversity in our workforce, BIPOC being Black, Indigenous, people of color, which includes Asian Pacific Islander, the Latino or Latinx community. And really, truthfully, that's a place that it really does build upon the strategic business plan, because that was also a very clear goal in that. We do a really good job of talking to young people in terms of, I would say, elementary school to high school around what it looks like to get involved in STEM. And then we recruit graduate students. And so the thought right now is, how do we do a little more work in that college age? We do definitely have some amazing internship programs, some that we use now very well, some that we haven't used in a while. And so how do we build those programs up and take more ownership of some of those programs is some of the strategy, and really looking into where there are gaps. The biggest gap being, like, how do we connect with young people between about 11th grade and now you're ready to work in the workforce. And some of that means you come straight from high school. And so what does that look like? And then what does it look like for people who do need a 2-year or certificate or 4-year degree for their specific interest? What does it look like to connect with them before they are looking at jobs, right? So like mid-sophomore, junior year. And so that is probably the small gap in our pipeline. So absolutely correct. We do need to build the pipeline. We've done things on both ends, and there's a gap in the middle. And so it's really trying to address that small gap. HR is doing a really great job of helping kind of nail down what we can do a little bit differently in that place, moving our investments around because there aren't more investments, and so being clear about that as well. So that would be, I think that answers the question.
Yep, that's great. Thank you, Nikotris. And this might be our final question of this town hall. I'm going to throw this back to Travis, and that is, how do you anticipate the Biden administration's transportation policy or legislation will either support or make it more difficult for us to accomplish the SAP actions and perhaps just more broadly our mission as an agency?
Yeah, as a former congressional aide and federal affairs advisor and federal political junkie, I really like this question. And frankly, as I look at the SAP, I think we are in really exciting and incredible alignment with the new administration coming in. If you look at what the president-elect has said, racial justice will be a key priority, as will climate, across all policy areas. And so you can see we've really embedded that into the strategic action plan and how we address transportation. We know that Biden has indicated that infrastructure is going to be a key priority for this administration. And so I think we're going to have a lot of opportunities to work closely with them and that we will be able to get funding for some of the areas that we're really looking at. I think we'll see a renewed focus at the federal level on public transportation and active transportation as an area of investment, as well as electric vehicles. That is an area that we as an agency will struggle to really shift people into electric vehicles unless we have support all the way to the top with new corporate average fuel efficiency standards that the Biden administration will likely put into place, additional federal subsidies and help with getting people into electric vehicles. And I think we'll also see an increased emphasis on being able to fund the charging infrastructure that's needed. As someone who had to drive all around Newport over the weekend to find a charging station for my electric vehicle, I can tell you it's going to be really important to make sure that we have those charging stations out there so that people feel comfortable buying a electric vehicle and know they can charge wherever they go. So I'm really excited about what the new administration is going to bring forward. I think we can really align well The one other thing I would note is Secretary Mayor Pete, as I like to call him, otherwise known as Secretary-designate Pete Buttigieg, will have a spelling contest for who can spell that right and the most creative misspelling, has indicated in his campaign platform that he was extremely interested in road usage charging and in shifting to charging by the mile because of his support for electric vehicles. So we've already started to reach out to the transition team and expect to have conversations with them about road usage charging, about climate, about some of those issues. So I think it's an exciting opportunity with the Strategic Action Plan to have folks all the way up into the White House and the U.S. Department of Transportation who'll be there to support our efforts.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much, Travis. And thank you, Assistant Directors and Director Strickler, for joining us today and providing some very honest and engaging answers to these questions that staff have. And this is not the one and done. We're going to be doing these on an ongoing basis throughout the year. We'll be having another one on the budget in early February, and Travis will, I'm sure, be on point for that one as well. And check out the News Hub, which is a new way that we have of communicating news and information about the agency. If you go to our intranet site, you can click on the News Hub, and then there's an events tab, an events link, where you can get information about events like this that we'll be having. Also, I'd encourage you to visit our Strategic Action Plan intranet page, also linked from the front page, for more tools and resources. And then if you'd like to take our survey, the link is up there on the screen. I also put it into the Slido. It's surveymonkey.com/r/SAP message survey. We'd love to hear from you about what you thought. And again, thank you for your attention, for joining us today. And I hope that you all have just a great day.